Good morning, everybody. Come on in, all you deplorables. Grab your coffee. It's time. You know what it's time for? It's time for Coffee with Scott Adams. Good morning, good morning. Did you miss me? I said that right as you said missed you. That was weird. Hello, deplorables. Calling all deplorables. Have all the deplorables come home from church yet? Why is it that the churches are full of deplorable people today? What's up with that? Hillary Clinton, explain that. I did not hear Trump's Gettysburg speech, but I did see his 20-something points. And I thought they were really strong. And I mean that not in a policy sense, but I mean that in the sense that they were clear. There were lots of them. They were very specific, and they all fit a theme. In other words, they all made sense as a whole. You sound stuffy. I think that's just my morning voice. I'm actually not stuffy at all. Well, maybe I should replay that speech. Did he make it short like the Gettysburg Address? Trump has no policies. Yeah, suddenly makes a little sense. Yeah, that's about as policy thick as you can get. One of the things I love about the way Trump approaches stuff is he does that business person's communicate simply kind of thing. If you look at all the stuff on his list, it's really sensationally well communicated. It's just so plainly and simply stated. Now you could say there are lots of details he left out, and you can say it's not practical, and you can say you won't get it done. You can say lots of things about it, but it's simple and it's clear. I love the one about you can't come up with a new government regulation unless you remove 2 old regulations. And the thing about that is, I'm sure that's totally impractical, but at the same time, it's really simple to understand. And it makes a statement. So it acknowledges that sometimes you're going to need a new regulation. So I think that would be the problem with people saying cut regulations. He's not saying cut regulations. He's just saying have better ones. And I don't know if that's practical, but as a simple political message, it's really well crafted. All right, when we get to 1,000 people, I'm going to tell you what Trump could say to win the election, and it wouldn't require him to have any new policies. It wouldn't require him to do anything grandstanding at all. Just a simple 5-minute statement that would almost guarantee him getting elected. I'll wait till we get 1,000 people here. Shave his head, yeah. Trump still has the option of shaving his head, but I'm thinking that's not likely. He said it at Gettysburg? What did he say at Gettysburg? That he'll shave his head? I don't think he said that. You're tingling with anticipation. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, his pardon me joke was pretty good. All right, when we get to 1,000 people, I'll tell you a simple thing that Trump could say in the speech. It could just be part of a speech that wouldn't require him to change any opinions and would almost certainly win the race for him. Trump already said it yesterday. Yeah, I do believe that if he said he would shave his head if he won, it would actually make a big difference. If you have a population this big, and you're only trying to move 1 or 2%, and he's probably within 1 or 2%, because polls tend to close as they get closer to the end. I think he could move it 1 or 2% by promising to shave his head if he won. It doesn't make any sense, but I'm almost positive he can. I don't think he'll do it, by the way. Cut his hair, forget it. 1,000. All right, there we go. So remember I told you that I was going to tell you a simple thing that Trump could say that would almost guarantee you won the election, and it wouldn't require him to change any policies or even propose any new ones. And this is what it looks like. This is Donald Trump to win the election. All right, folks, you've been hearing a lot from Hillary and her supporters that there's something wrong with my temperament because I sometimes use words that offend people. But people, there's a big difference between words and launching the nuclear arsenal. Specifically, to launch the nuclear arsenal, and I'm not going to tell you anything that isn't public information. You could find this on WikiLeaks if you wanted to, or you could find it on Wikipedia if you wanted to, that you need 3 people to sign off on a nuclear attack. The process looks like this, and just describe what the process looks like. Somebody brings you something, you have to put in a code, but only use the stuff that's public knowledge. Don't tell the enemies anything they don't need to know. And simply go through the process and show that you understand it. That's it. Just say, if you're worried that words are going to destroy the world, I don't think you know much about the world. I think you need to give our adversaries a little more credit. Nobody launches a nuclear weapon because somebody said something that sounded a little offensive. And by the way, by the time I'm elected president, this would be Donald Trump speaking, everybody's going to know who I am. There won't be any surprises. And so that was the technique. All he'd have to do is say, look, words don't destroy countries. I've said a few offensive things. You know who I am. But words don't destroy worlds. Policies destroy worlds. And if you wonder how I would approach the nuclear situation, let me tell you. Here's how the process works. And just calmly describe the process of how a president would be approached with a decision like that, who would have to be involved, and how he would think about it. And also say that it would be the last thing in the world that he'd ever want to do. So it's one thing to not give your enemies information ahead of time about what you might do, but it's another thing to think, to jump from some offensive words to imagine that somebody's dangerous to the to the ongoing existence of the planet. So this is what I call the high ground maneuver. The high ground maneuver is you, instead of being in the weeds, and in this case the weeds would be who would be better for a nuclear decision. All right, that's sort of the weeds detail. Is Trump better in that situation, or is Clinton better in that situation? So people could disagree on the weeds. So you take it up a step and say, look, let's put things in perspective. I say a few things that offend people, but people don't start wars over a few offensive nicknames. All right. So you just put it in perspective. They're scaring you about words, and they're helping you ignore the bigger problems in the world. Well, I'm not going to church today, but you're going to church. Peggy Noonan labeled Trump nuts yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. He's certainly acting like it. It's sort of nuts in the sense that, we're all sitting on the bench watching the star player and saying, that star player should have run faster. You should have thrown that ball better. But we're all kind of sitting on the bench watching him. So it's easy to second guess from the bench. I don't surf. Not insult number one. You wouldn't fool Garfield on me. Diehards are. Yeah, then I think Trump could also make the following points. He could say, now we know that the violence at my events was incited by Clinton's team. We have the undercover video. Who's more dangerous in that situation? We also have Hillary Clinton talking war, nuclear war really, with Russia. I don't have those problems with Russia. Who's more dangerous? We now have Joe Biden saying he wants to take me behind the bleachers in high school and punch me in the face. Which side talks violence? All right, but let's put it in perspective. I've said some things that got taken out of context too. Talk is just talk. People can tell the difference. We're not children. We know the difference between somebody saying they want to take you behind the school and punch you in the nose and somebody who really wants to punch you in the nose. The voters aren't idiots. And the Clinton campaign is playing you for idiots. They painted this cartoony picture where I'm the dangerous one, even though the evidence is clear that the danger is coming from the other side. If you were to put a bunch of Republicans in a room and a bunch of Democrats in a room, and they were just the ones who owned weapons, who owned guns, you would find that the Republicans generally are using their guns for sporting and self-defense, and that the Democrats who have guns, on average, again, these are just gross averages, but they're more likely to commit a crime. So who's more dangerous? He's basically the most peaceful candidate we've probably had in a long time. Logic against persuasion. You can use some form of logic if you're doing what I call the high ground maneuver. And the reason that the high ground maneuver works, and by the way, that was a really good point. If this sounds logical, how does that square with the fact that I've told you consistently that logic doesn't influence anybody? Here's how it works. The high ground maneuver is not about the fact that it was logical. It's about the fact that you've positioned yourself by saying a high ground maneuver as being the high ground person. So the persuasive part is not actually the logical thing you said, because you can say logical things all day long and not persuade anybody. The persuasive part is that you've positioned yourself as the superior, wiser, high-level thinker, and people can't stand that. They will rise immediately to your level so as not to be left behind in the weeds. So when I say the argument is that words don't hurt people, and the Clinton campaign is making a ridiculous case that using some unpopular words is the same as blowing up the world. So when I say something like that, it's logical, right? That words are different than nuclear war. But the logic is actually somewhat irrelevant to the fact that I've simply established myself as the bigger thinker in the conversation. If you're thinking that words lead to nuclear war, you just haven't been alive in the world, or you're just trying to con the public, because it's a ridiculous notion. So when I say that, you're immediately encouraged to rise to my level of thinking in a way that you wouldn't just because it was logical. All right. So the logic of what I said, it is logical, but it's not why you're convinced. You're convinced because I've somewhat cleverly established myself as the bigger thinker by that point of reasoning. Isolationist or warmongering? It's never a either or. Best emotional roller coaster ever. It really has been. Could you repeat all of that? Are you serious? I can't tell. It seems impossible that Trump would win, you say. So let me ask you this. If somebody gets called at home and they have an online poll, and let's say it's a telephone poll, which are most of them are, right? So let's say there's a telephone poll and somebody answers a phone at home, a landline. Here's the first question. Are they more likely to be single or married? That's the first question. If they have a landline and they answer it, I think more likely to be older and married, right? Now let's say you're married and you're older and your spouse is in the room. You're the husband. You answer the phone. And somebody says, who do you vote for? Your spouse is in the room with you. She doesn't know who you plan to vote for because you plan to vote for Trump. She's actually in the room. And there's somebody on the phone and you've got to say who you're going to vote for. Do you say Trump to the pollster when you haven't told your spouse you're going to vote for Trump? Nope. Nope, you do not. Now, go back to any other race where that was the case. Could you imagine that someone would be afraid to say in front of their spouse that they supported Romney? Would somebody be afraid to say in front of their spouse that they supported Barack Obama? No. In fact, you'd probably be signaling that you're the most open-minded person in the room. Would they be afraid to say they supported, Reagan over who was it, Jimmy Carter, a million years ago? Nope, they would not. But how many people would be afraid of saying in front of their spouse that they support Donald Trump? Every husband who supports Donald Trump and knows that his wife doesn't like it and it's going to be a big hairy problem. And out of 100 people, how many people would need to hide it from their wife in order for Trump to actually be ahead in these polls? 2%? 2 out of 100? 1% out of 50? Do you think there's 1% out of 50 who would lie in front of a spouse to stay out of trouble? Yep. So the funniest thing I keep seeing on Twitter, funny in a weird way, is the number of people who say, can't you see that it's all over because Clinton is ahead in all these mainstream polls? Therefore, it's over. The polls are clearly in one direction, up by 8, up by 11. Now, there are two parts to this. One is whether those polls are accurate, given that there are other polls that show Trump is ahead. Yeah, and there's a lot of oversampling going on, etc. I think I had a point, but I just lost it. Why did I shut down Twitter? Yeah, so let's talk about that. So you probably noticed that several days ago I said that if it's true that Twitter is shadow banning me, which means that some people, but not all, who follow me would not be able to see my tweets. So shadow banning means that some of the people who follow you can't see you, it doesn't mean that all of them can't. So people have been consistently telling me that that's the case, but I was a little skeptical because people could be wrong about that, right? It could be just there's an algorithm that shows some things first, and it just looks like I wasn't being shown. But I said that if it was true, that if I was being shadow banned simply because of my talking about Trump, that would be essentially traitorous. In other words, Twitter would be guilty of treason in my view. Now, predictably, this caused all of the word thinkers, the people who don't know what figurative language is, to come out and say, and I have to do this in a funny imitation. This is one of those things you can't say in your normal talking voice, so I have to make them sound dumb when they say it. So this is my impression of people tweeting me to say, treason. Treason doesn't make sense because there's a legal definition, and it does not meet the legal definition of treason. See, it sounded better because I said it like a dope. Yeah, the definition of treason is blah, blah, blah. Now, the point, of course, is that if it were true that Twitter is shadow banning me for my political speech, the point is that Twitter is important enough in this country as a communication channel that if they're banning some people and not telling them, they're manipulating our democratic process in a way that is close enough to treason, because it would gut the basic core of the American system. It would make the Constitution practically irrelevant at that point. If that's happening, if Twitter is actually shadow banning people because of political preferences, and not the crazy ones, they're not actually Hitlers, they're just people who have a different preference for a president. If that's happening, I'm going to say it again, that's as close to treason as you can get. I mean, that is, I'm sure, totally legal, and it's within the terms of service, and it doesn't meet the legal standard of treason, and nobody would go to jail for it. I understand that. So for the dumb people who are listening, I say that. The rest of you already knew that the figurative speech is figurative speech. Yeah, so it would be a moral treason. It would be a treason against the soul of the country. It would be a wrong, just such a deep wrong, because our ability to have free discourse is behind every good that the country has ever produced, right? If you take that away, the whole process breaks down. So to say that if Twitter is shadow banning because of political speech and not any other reason, you would have to say that that's the most deeply unethical, irresponsible, treasonous, morally, not legally, behavior that you've ever heard out of any company. I mean, there are companies who have done, terrible things, polluting the environment. There are companies that have injured their own employees, and companies that have sold things they knew to be dangerous, like cigarette companies. Well, it would be hard to match the cigarette companies for evil, but manipulating the free will of the people, or what they imagine is their free will, would be one of the deepest evils that the country has ever produced, if it's happening. And again, we don't know what's happening. All right, so what's funny about that is I said that if I didn't hear back from Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, if I didn't hear back from him in 2 days, I said I was going to destroy Twitter. Because, by the way, if it's true that they're banning me for political speech, I think it should be destroyed. Would you disagree? I mean, I think Twitter is amazing. I really enjoy it, and I would like it to survive and thrive and be great. But let me put the question to you. If you knew for sure that I had been shadow banned just for the way I'm talking about Trump, and I don't even endorse Trump as a candidate, I'm just talking about him. If it were true that Twitter shadow banned me because of my political speech, which was totally mainstream, by the way, there's nothing I'm saying that's outrageous at all. If that was true, wouldn't you say Twitter would have to die? Seriously. Could you consider yourself a legitimate patriot, or even a serious citizen of the United States, someone who respects the Constitution, respects the system, even if you disagree with the politicians and even if you disagree with your fellow citizens, but as someone who respects the country, someone who stands for the Pledge of Allegiance, could you allow Twitter to exist if you knew that they were suppressing political speech? I don't know that they're doing it, by the way. I still don't know, because I think we could be wrong about this. But if it's true that Twitter is suppressing free speech and doing it in this clever, behind-the-way, shadow-banning way, then Twitter needs to die. And it needs to die completely. It doesn't need to be, sold to another company that resurrects it. And it would need to die, because the country needs that. The companies in the future, the reason that lawsuits are allowed in part is for justice for the aggrieved, but the other part is to keep people from doing the same thing in the future, right? So if enough companies get sued for doing X, the next company says, I better not do X, I'll get sued. So when I say that if Twitter is suppressing my free speech, the entire company needs to die, it needs to just go out of business, I mean that quite literally, and I'm quite serious about that, because you could never have another company think that that's worth the risk. All right? It could never be worth the risk, because that would be a blow at the most important, probably the most important freedom, the freedom of free discourse. I'm already on Gab. You're not an ends justify the means kind of guy. This wouldn't really be an ends justify the means situation. This would be a situation where the world is just better with a statement that big. because there'd be another company that comes along and becomes the new Twitter. And as you know, there's already one called Gab. By the way, Gab is cool. I went over there and tried it out. People are very nice to me over there so far, but they don't have an app, and I have to sign into my browser every time I use it. So it was just enough friction that I've gone a few days without bothering to sign in. So get that app out there, and then there's a real, yeah, I know there's an app in Newark. Are you going full persuasion? I have not. Is the Gab design visually nice? Yeah, it's okay. I mean, and I think Gab doesn't handle photos at this point, does it? Or does it? What about James O'Keefe? What about him? If you've seen the videos, you know that the people on the videos are speaking at length about something that I don't think it could be taken out of context. And by the way, I haven't been watching much of the regular news lately, but have you seen anybody ask Hillary Clinton about that Project Veritas video? Have you seen anybody ask her about it in the mainstream media? Because why do they have any other question? Because here's the thing. If, one reporter, but why does the mainstream media allow there to be any other news? Here's how you can judge whether the mainstream media deserves your respect. When something like that happens, I'm talking about the Project Veritas video, where they have the undercover video of the folks on the Clinton side saying how they were planning to incite violence and did incite violence at Trump rallies. Now, given that the primary message from Clinton's side is that the Trump team is dangerous, right? It's not a secondary message, is it? It's the primary message. The number one message from the Clinton side is that these other guys, the Trump supporters, are dangerous. And Trump is dangerous himself. It's the number one message. That message is completely undercut by these videos if they're accurate. So you tell me, is there any other news today? There isn't. Yeah, I don't care about Donald Trump's 28 fucking plans for what he's going to do when he's elected, which were very impressive from a persuasion perspective, even if you don't agree with the details. I don't care what anybody's going to do with their fucking taxes, because they're not going to do any of those things anyway. Congress will figure that out. I don't care who offended anybody. I care about that one thing, because the candidates have made their opponent into one thing. Trump has made Hillary into crooked Hillary. So if there's some news that shows that she's not crooked, that's the only news today, because that's the big thing. Is she crooked or is she not? If there's news that shows she isn't, that's big news, right? If you could prove a negative. Likewise, if there's news that shows that Trump is not the dangerous one, when in fact the entire branding from the Clinton team is he's the dangerous one, look at all these crazy people who support him. If that's the main theme of the election, there isn't any other news until you deal with this, right? So if the mainstream media is not fully dealing with this, like just stop everything. I would stop reporting on Clinton. I would say, look, I'm not even going to cover your goddamn rally until you answer this question, all right? Tell us about that video, Clinton. Tell us how well you know this guy. If I were the mainstream media, I would never cover a Clinton rally again. I would never cover her speech again. I wouldn't cover anything again until she answers those questions, because it's the core of the entire decision is whether or not Trump is the dangerous one, all right? Because they're not even talking about policies anymore. You know, the days of talking about their policies is long gone. In fact, they practically agree on immigration. I'm cutting out a lot. Am I cutting out for other people or just some? It's probably the connection on your end. No, no, no. Yes, no, no, no. Yeah, so I think the cutting out probably is as much on your end as mine. It's fine here. As long as it's fine for somebody, that means it's not on my end. Duh. She stopped taking questions when asked about it. Yeah, so everybody understands why she would avoid some questions on the Project Veritas stuff, the things, when it first came out. Because I think it is fair to give the politicians a little time to figure out how they're going to respond to stuff, especially stuff that's big. So I'm not terribly bothered by the fact that she blew off the first questions about it. But at this point, the media has to dig in. All right. I would say the media should put all of its credibility on this one point. If the media ignores the question of who incited the violence at the Trump rallies, and that became really it's the biggest impression we have of this whole election is that the Trump people are somehow violent and the Democrats are not. If it turns out it's the opposite, and they don't cover that, that's sort of all you need to know about your system, right? Can citizens sue the DNC? Well, they should if they got hurt. Yeah, it's one thing to avoid questions because they all do that. But this is the only question left, right? If it's either true that Clinton is not crooked, we should know that. And if it's true that Trump is not the dangerous one, we should know that, because the election just boiled down to those two things. Which one of those do you think is true and more important? Bernie Sanders lost whatever respect he didn't have. Good line. The Al Smith dinner, I didn't even listen to the whole Al Smith dinner. I don't think that those things move the needle at all. Yeah, I've never really seen the news be so adamant about talking about the legitimacy of the messenger as they have in this case. And what's funny about it is that the people on the tape are the people on the tape. And if the media wants to know if they really said those things, and if it was in the context that we think it is, those are real people. You can just go ask them. Go fucking ask them. All right? Has CNN said, we've tried to get a quote from Creamer and Soval, the guys on the tape. Has CNN said we reached out to them for a comment? Have they been on yet? One of the guys wrote an article about it. And what did he say? Did he excuse it in his article? They have said nothing. There's a crystal meltdown. Was there a Bill Crystal meltdown somewhere? He attacked the media for being biased for Trump? When did that happen? He denied it and blamed Trump for the hidden videos? Yeah, so let me ask you this. Remember, one of the reasons I say that that reality must be a simulation, a software simulation, is that there's a lot of code reuse. And I just think it's funny that one of the man who's the biggest problem for Hillary Clinton is once again a creamer. I mean, her husband's been creaming on every woman he could, and now their new problem is another creamer. So what are the odds of that? And so how many people saw Donna Brazile try to answer questions with Megyn Kelly about whether she gave the question to Clinton? That was the funniest thing. Oh my God. I've never seen anybody completely destroy their reputation on camera that thoroughly. I mean, how could you ever trust Donna Brazil to do anything for you if she might be asked on camera about it? She died on camera. Oh my God, that was I felt like her career ended that moment. And Brazil called her a thief. It was, I think she went to God, she went to Russia, she went to thievery, she went everywhere. Yep, they've all attacked the source. So here's the things that what we see is that for the most part, Trump argues about what Clinton did or did not do in office. So he talks about the things she did wrong and the things she should have done that she didn't do. When people talk about Trump, they're always talking about the words he used so that they can make up something he didn't do. So most of the criticisms about Trump are about things he hasn't done in the past and won't do in the future. Most of the criticisms about Clinton are things she actually did, or didn't do. But in the case of didn't doing it, it's something that she should have done, according to Trump. If you think about it, have we ever had a race where your reality is actually running against imagination? That's literally happening here, right? Now, I will concede that there's a lot of conspiracy theory imagination on both sides. So if you're, the Trump people talking about Hillary killing 57 people, I personally don't buy that. So I think that stuff's imaginary. But nobody's making any decisions based on that. I don't think so. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, I'm not going to vote for Clinton because she killed 57 opponents. We kind of talk about it, but we don't really believe it. But the things people believe about Trump are that they believe he said a bunch of racist things, which if you look at them individually, they're not. I saw Clinton labeling, she does like a list of all the things he's done, and none of them stand up to scrutiny. She says, he questioned the legitimacy of our first African-American president. Was he eligible to be president? Well, he questioned the legitimacy of Ted Cruz too, and he didn't do it because Ted is so white. It's just ridiculous. If Trump attacks the legitimacy of anybody who can attack their legitimacy, doesn't matter who they are, it's kind of tough to say that this one time it was for racial reasons. I talked about the Judge Curiel thing. If it's true that 90% of people who have Mexican heritage, whether they're American citizens or not, 90% of them probably have a bad feeling about Trump because of his policies. It's not unreasonable to say that having a judge with Mexican heritage has a 90% chance of being biased against you. And it's just common sense. It has nothing to do with any racial opinion whatsoever. It's basically polling information. So if you go right down the line, most of what Trump has done or hasn't done is almost completely imaginary. And then you add on top of that what you imagine he'll do, blowing up the world if he's elected. So you have built an entire imaginary case on the Trump side. The things you imagined he did that he didn't do, the things you imagined he said that were taken out of context or misinterpreted, and the things you imagine he'll do in the future that are completely unlike anything he's ever done in the past, against Clinton, who actually did things that people don't like. I'm being shadow banned. Look at that. My number of viewers is 29, when in fact it's probably in the thousands. Interesting. How do you explain that? What happens if I click that 29? What's it say? It says I've got 5,500 total viewers. I don't know if it means it, but it only shows 29, huh? chat hidden. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. It went from 1,000 to 0. Huh. Let's take a screen picture of that, will we? Somebody say that there are really 1.3 thousand viewers on here. And I'm going to screen capture that. Somebody say that. How many viewers were there 1 minute ago? Could somebody say there used to be over 1,000 viewers on here? Come on, somebody say it. All right, I missed it, but that's good enough. Yes. So, what does that mean, huh? There were 1,000 when I started, but now there's only 0. What's up with that, huh? Is it a technical glitch? Could it be because I just gave a good reason or a good suggestion for how Trump could win the election easily, just by showing some seriousness about the nuclear codes? Dropping you from the front page. Is that happening? So after I do these Periscopes, I don't know who does it, but there's always it looks like an automated tweet that goes out that says who are the top, 3 or 5 Periscopers. And I'm usually in the top 2. But I'm pretty sure that number is based on the number you're seeing now with these. It's just the 0 of us here having a conversation. Oh yeah, let me restart. Hey everybody, I'm going to turn this off and restart and then see what happens. Hello everybody, trying again. See how many viewers get on here. So I was just looking at, welcome back everybody. Hey look, we got viewers again. Witness you, I'm witnessing you. What was the point? Point was trying to find out if Twitter was censoring me. I just looked at my graph. There's a little graph that gets created that shows how many people are watching at any moment. And it went from about 1.8 thousand down to 0 almost instantly. You lost connection. Well, I turned it off. You didn't get a tweet saying I'm back, huh? You should stream elsewhere. Where should I stream elsewhere? YouTube? Gab? I think it was a bug. Might have been the censor button. Could have been because I swore. As soon as I mentioned Project Veritas. Couldn't find the replay. The replay might take a minute because it has to process the video and get it ready. New ABC poll says Clinton's way up, but I don't think you could believe anything that comes out of an ABC poll, can you? It's cutting out intermittently. It happens to Mike Cernovich too? Well, I'd have to know if it happens to anybody else who is not talking politics. All right, so we got our 1,000 people back. Is it my imagination, or has Trump's whole woman problem just already been pushed to the back burner. Was that like the shortest scandal of all times? It's not my coincidence. It's not my imagination, right? That every scandal shortens as we get closer to the election. Like this should have been a 2-month scandal, but we kind of compressed it into a week and a half. Yeah, and now it's funny. I thought in Trump's last debate he was going out of his way to not do anything that was even slightly controversial, and the three things that they took out of it was bad hombre, which again is just colorful speaking, nasty woman, which is just colorful speaking, and he wouldn't necessarily support a election result that he thought was rigged. Come on, are those three things controversial? That's all they could get out of it. But he had them running around like chickens saying, he said nasty, he must be a sexist. Bad hombre, yeah. Iran took 2 hostages. There were a third more Democrats in the ABC poll. Was the nasty comment a mistake? I swear to God, if he had said, Ted Cruz was a nasty man, would anybody have said anything about it? See, the fact that the persuaders on the Clinton side can make anything he says sound like it's an insult against women or a racist thing or a dangerous thing. It doesn't matter what he says. I mean, he could say, good morning, looks like rain. And people would say, rain, you racist? Only racists talk about rain. And you'd say, well, that doesn't sound right, but maybe it's true. AT&T, Time Warner, I don't think it is a big deal. I don't think that together they have enough power to be a big deal. Hypernormalization. Trump will stop the merger. Maybe so. Don't you think a merger will reduce competition? I see the competition as only the internet now, meaning that if I appear on CNN, which probably will never happen again, in the afternoon, I don't think more than 1 million people see what I do. I don't know what their size of their audience is, but it's probably 3 million in prime time. And so if I'm there in the afternoon and I've got 5 minutes, which you'd think would be a lot of screen time, there just aren't that many people who see it. But if I say something that's awesome on the internet, it can get retweeted and influence people, and then they turn it into their own words, and it becomes sort of a thing. By the way, if you've watched from the beginning and you've been watching my tweeting and blogging, would you say that I've influenced things based on things I've written and said? Does anybody here think I've influenced the actual election? My Periscope numbers are going down again. Interesting. So, yes. Right. So, I would say that being on television probably hasn't influenced anybody about anything. That's my impression. I haven't seen any evidence. Now, this is interesting that the Periscope numbers are going down. That doesn't look right, does it? Is this driving back down to 0? Interesting. But I'm pretty sure that when I do things on the internet, when the ideas are good, they spread. So if I say something that makes sense, it spreads, and people get it in their minds, and it becomes part of the conversation. So I think the internet is just the sort of the mind of the public at this point, and the regular media is an entertainment or some noise you put on in the background when you're doing the ironing. But I think the brain of the world is the internet now. Okay, are you all watching what's happening to the count of people on this Periscope? Because I'm pretty sure it's not going down in reality. Yeah, I'm totally being. This is not an accident, right? Last time instant zero, and this time it's just decreasing, sort of like it's decreasing as if it's happening on its own. That is some crazy crap. You're actually watching it in real time. It looks rigged to me. Doesn't it look rigged to you? Holy cow. I'm just sort of, my mind is being boggled because I'm watching it happening right in front of all of you. You're all watching this, right? So whatever's happening with that number, there's definitely something going on here. I wonder if they're doing it real time and they're just laughing. If there's like a real person on here saying, "Watch what I do to him now." It's actually increasing, but it looks like it's decreasing. Oh, the connection is intermittent. Now, don't you think that also could be part of the shadow banning? So don't you think that people who say the wrong thing get a lot of intermittent connections, if you know what I mean? Twitter owns Periscope. Is there a denial of service going on? Oh, I forgot to finish my story before. I was saying that I'd said I would call for the end of Twitter if they were really doing treasonous stuff, such as what it looks like is happening right now, which is blocking free speech. And then on the very day that I said that I would do that, there was this massive denial of service attack, and Twitter actually went down on the very... Now, I've never threatened to take Twitter down before, and I certainly never put an actual date on when it would happen, and I don't remember how many times Twitter has gone down, but that was a weird coincidence, wasn't it? It says ended. Interesting. The safety council? There's a safety council on Twitter. All right. Yeah, numbers going down, and none of this is real. So, all right, I'm gonna. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. Since they're trying to censor me, it appears. I mean, it looks like that. I can't say that for certain, but I'm gonna say it looks like that. I will, just because I feel like being a dick, I'm going to tell you again how Trump can easily win this election. And there'll be enough of you that hear it, even with this suppressed audience, that if the message is good, it will get to the right people. And if it's not, it shouldn't get to the right people. And here is the message again. Somebody asked me to repeat this from earlier. If Trump wants to win the election, let's see if it goes to zero before I say this. If Trump wants to win the election, he just has to insert in one of his speeches. Watch, it's going right to zero as soon as I talk about Trump. Watch this. If Trump wants to win the election, let's see if it just kicks me off. He just needs to talk seriously about the process for launching a nuclear attack. In other words, just show that he takes it seriously, he understands it, and that there's more than one person involved, because there is. It really isn't just the president's decision. I think it's also the Secretary of Defense. And if it's also the Secretary of Defense, then you also have to assume that there's somebody who actually pushes the buttons, who also are probably trained about when to believe the Secretary of Defense and the President, because it probably isn't automatic. I would think that if you're the person who actually pushes the button, this is so funny. I'm going to take another screen grab of this.